But I want to start first by saying a big thank you to the grandparents that we have in the house today. And some of us may not appreciate what I'm talking about right now, but in a few minutes you may understand where I'm going. You see, a lot of times we take people for granted, especially because we've been with them for so long. They've been around us that we don't appreciate them as much as we ought to appreciate them. And sometimes, especially some of we younger ones, because of generational change or changes, we tend to believe or we tend to perceive the older ones as old school, and we no longer value their inputs and some of the values that they have to pass on to us. Even when you become a grandmother, that work still continues. It never stops. It never ends. I said, look, listen, the same investment that our parents put into us is equally the same investment they put into our children. And I believe that our grandparents here today can bear me witness of some of the things that I'm talking about. A lot of us are still here taking care of our grandchildren. True or false? Very true. A lot of us are still interceding and praying for our children and our grandchildren. The same way that we've been running around, struggling, helter-skelter, to make sure that we give the best for our children. Guess what? We have extended the same to our grandchildren. And we are still laboring over them, wishing them the best, praying for them, making sure that they still have the best of life. And please, I want to appeal to the children and to the grandchildren this morning, especially because I've observed a trend that probably exists more in the Western world than in the Western culture than it does from back home. And one of the trends I want to address is this, that sometimes we believe that our parents or our grandparents have become so old enough that we begin to consider them as burdens in our lives. And because we perceive them as burdens, we try to adopt some of the culture that exists in the Western culture, where we now think that, well, they've got into a old age where we think we can no longer care for them. They have become such a burden that we now think the best option is to go and drop them in a home to be taken care of by other people. Listen, when you were growing up, they did not dump you somewhere. They labored, they struggled, they did everything to make sure that you are where you are today. Without their investments, without their labor, without their sweat, many of us will not be where we are today. And the least that we owe to them, that we owe them, is to ensure that we give them the best quality of life even in their old age. If they did not think you were a burden when they were taking care of you, neither should you consider them a burden now that they are old and they don't have that strength anymore in them. So I am challenging us, and that's why I'm insisting that wherever you are right now, that you are listening, and you are seated, and you are listening attentively to what I have to say. Because listen, let me tell you something. You are not just doing it for them, you are also doing it for yourself. Because there is a blessing that comes from it, from labor and taking care of your older ones in their old age. Listen, when you make them happy in their old age, you are positioning yourself for a blessing that you can never be measured. That can never be measured.